Show on Startup Club. This show is actually a live show and podcast. And if you're catching it in podcast, you might not know this, but you can actually come and listen to the show every Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern. We run this show, with the exception, the first time we're going to break that rule is next week. We're running it Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern. And next week's topic is going to be all about Chat GPT. We're so excited about this, and we're getting some experts in for this show on Wednesday. We think that this technology, this AI technology, is going to be a game changer. It is going to be a revolution. It's something that I call a paradigm shift. And when you can catch a paradigm shift, oh my gosh, you can scale your company. Well, first of all, if you're interested in this topic about scaling, please share the room. Right at the very bottom of your screen, there's a button. And Michelle, I'll get you to do that as well. Share on Clubhouse. I'm doing it myself right now. Right at the very bottom, you can see it. I just shared it. Yeah, one right now, share. Um, if you're in the room and you think this is a valuable topic, I think it is. I find it fascinating that there are 32 million businesses in the United States. And a stat that I learned from Kevin was that 4%, only 4% actually scale. So why is it that they don't? Now I know that a lot of people don't scale their businesses because of because of life choices, and let's be honest, it's stressful, it's scary. Kevin, welcome to the show, Kevin. You wrote the book, The Entrepreneurial Scale Up System. How to overcome challenges of achieving seven-figure business success and beyond. And we are here today to listen to you and ask questions and really understand, first of all, why is it that there are 33 million businesses in the United States and only a very small fraction scale?
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you, Colin. Yeah, I think there's a number of reasons, and of course, choice is one of those. Not everybody wants to scale, and that's absolutely fine. But for those that do, then there's a number of challenges, and one of those is whether we're thinking strategically enough and actually looking at where we might be able to create a competitive advantage. And you were just talking there about doing something that is going to be a sea change, a paradigm shift. So thinking strategically, how can we really create a competitive advantage is one of those that a lot of us don't do. We just kind of create a business and do the best that we can, but don't really think about how we can do something much better and create that advantage. And then another, of course, is then that ruthless and focused follow through, and really then being ruthless about how we're going to execute on that strategy and avoid getting distracted and caught in all sorts of things. And one of those would be the owner's trap, where essentially we just create a business that is over reliant on us as the individual owner of the business, and therefore can't scale really beyond almost beyond the number of hours that we can work in the business.
All right, so let's try to unpack a few of these ideas because you're throwing a lot out at already, which is great. And it's interesting because you wrote this book on scaling, the Entrepreneurial Scale Up System by Kevin Brent. And yesterday I just submitted the final manuscript for Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat, a serial entrepreneur secrets revealed to Forbes for publishing on October 3rd. And so we cover scale quite extensively. It's actually the largest section of the book. And you hit on two concepts a minute ago. The first is this idea of the entrepreneur getting in their own way. Let's talk about that one first. Can you explain that a little more? How and why are entrepreneurs so good, or founders so good at the startup phase, but then fail to scale?
Well, one of the reasons is, of course, because we're self-starters, we feel that we should be the ones that should be coming up with all the answers, and to a certain extent doing all the doing, and it's a struggle for us to then empower other people in the business and give away a little bit of that control and allow other people to effectively be empowered, and that can be one of the restrictions then, in that we're too used to directing that business and having that leader follower mentality and not creating other leaders within the business. And of course, if we want to scale beyond a certain point, then we need to create other leaders within the business.
So I think the first key point here is that entrepreneurs, startups, founders, we need to understand our personality. We need to figure out what it is that made us successful in start, and how do we need to change in order to be successful in scale. And I do believe that the dominant instinct is a prevalent trait amongst all entrepreneurs. This dominance is what gets us out of the gate. It's what gets the job done.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you begin to have to rely on others, rely on other managers, rely on other leaders, let them make mistakes in front of you, that's not easy, is it, Kevin?
Not at all. In fact, yeah, absolutely hitting on. There's a section in the book actually around our personality profiles and how that influences us in business. And I'd absolutely agree with you in that. To get a business off the ground, you've got to have those dominance traits, but then as we take on people, we've got to either develop our empathy skills, are less, the ones that are more around managing people and building people teams, or we've got to be able to bring people into the business that can complement our personality and our skills to enable other people to flourish within the business.
So, Kevin, I just want to jump in here for a second. You know, I'm crazy for processes, and I love reading books that have lots of aids to help us plan and move along that are practical. And I found that from your book. But one of the things I thought particularly interesting that I think is a little bit different than a lot of books like this in a good way was your fundamental, principles about scaling, and the indicators on what you need to do at the next level revolve around people. I'd love for you to share with the members what what your belief is there, what you're teaching there, what your system is. But before you start, I just want to say, everyone in the audience, if you send an email to hello@startup.club and you're one of the first 3 people to do that, we will send you a free book, probably an ebook, but you will get a free book. So I strongly suggest that you do that, as well as join our email list. It's a great way to get, that additional access. So, Kevin, why people, like, explain your theory about which way to go, and it's all around people. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, I
sorry,
think
I
you cut
lost.
out there for a second, Michelle. Kevin,
Yeah,
did
I
you pick
lost
up
you.
the question?
A little bit, I think, around the people side. And are you referring perhaps to the in-flight checklist that we have within the book,
Yeah,
Michelle?
that would be great if you gave us some insight into that.
Yeah. So one of the ways that we one of the differences, I think, in the way that we look at this whole business of scaling up our businesses is that instead of looking at it as a growth curve, which could be a linear curve, or whatever, however we might normally think about growing a business, we look at it in terms of a series of stepping stones. And that is around the numbers of people that we have within the business, because at the end of the day, with a few exceptions of types of businesses, it's the teams within our businesses that either can unlock the power of what we're doing, or actually can hold us back if we get it wrong with the people. And those stepping stones are in sizes and numbers of people. So if we think about it as when we start a business, and we might be on our own as a solopreneur, that's great. So we can climb the ladder of success, if you like, for a one-person business, and we can build that business to be a great little business, nice little profitable consulting business, maybe something like that. But the next stepping stone, if we want to move to the next stepping stone, would be where we've got a team of 3 to 5 people, something in that order. And that's a different kind of business from the one person business, and we need to think about a number of aspects as to how we're going to get to that, but also then and what the business needs to look like. And the reason that is that the business starts to get a bit more complex when we've got three to five people. If you think of the number of relationships that are going on there, we've got more complication within the business. But equally, if we've got 4 or 5 people within the business, if one person's not quite working out, we're not going to suddenly go back to just having that having being on our own. So we've got the power of those people starting to work together. And the next stepping stone then up from that is probably when we've got a team of about 8 to 12 people, and that's probably about the limit that we can get to as a leader follower type business. If we're the leader of the business driving everything through with 8 to 12 people, to get beyond that, we do need to create a senior leadership team beneath us, and we're then talking about probably having 20 to 25 people within the business. And this is because as teams of people, we work best in those sort of numbers. Groups of either three to five can be really powerful, but also 8 to 12. And in fact, if anybody that's got a military background, if you think to the way that units and squads are put together within the military, you tend to have them in those sort of numbers. And that's the way that we think about building the business. And at every one of those stepping stones, the question is, have we got to the top of that? Have we got a business that's functioning as efficiently and as profitably as possible at that stepping stone? And let's get it to that before we even think about trying to navigate to then the next one. And if we're going to then make the journey to that next stepping stone, we need to think about what the business needs to look like at that next stepping stone in terms of what's the strategy for us to get there and the business model that we need. What's the people need that we've got within that? How are we going to make sure we execute on that strategy? And have we got any cash requirements for us to get from this stepping stone to that next stepping stone, so that we avoid a valley in between those stepping stones? And that's typically what can happen, is we can get stuck in a trough or a valley of death between two of these stepping stones if we don't think about it in the right way.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. It's like you want to think about one piece at a time. You don't want to go too fast and then you stumble and the whole thing falls apart. Yeah, I think you're onto something there. I also think that, we'll stick with people for a minute and then we'll move over to what you talked about at the very beginning around a competitive advantage. But I also think that it's one thing to manage people, it's another thing to lead people, and it's a third thing to lead leaders. And then we'll move on from people. But did you want to just sort of maybe comment on that third point, that how do we find great leaders to help us run these companies to scale them?
Yeah, and of course that's really difficult, and we need to be able to create that culture within the business where we are able to empower people. And there's a great book by David Marquette around Turn This Ship Around, and he talks a lot about that, about how do we create other leaders within the business. And the first thing is getting people to think about the intent. So instead of giving orders and telling people what they need to do and the detail, we need to give them intent. So where is it that we're trying to head, and what's the reason that we need to be there? And if they understand that, then the next question is what, if people are coming to us for answers to questions, we need to be able to empower them. And instead of giving them again the orders, we need to ask them questions like, okay, so what do you think is the right thing to do, or what am I thinking right now is the best next question. So you're trying to get people to think about what would it be like to be in our shoes, and if they had to think in our way, what do they think I'm thinking right now? And David Marquette gives this great example. He was a submarine captain taking over control of a nuclear submarine, and realizing that actually it can't be the best model that he's, as the captain of the submarine with 220 crew members, it can't be that he's the only one that can make all the decisions and tell everybody what to do. So he turns that around completely and gets people to go, yeah, so if the intent is to position the submarine to be effective in this particular campaign, then it's the question, okay, so what do you think we need to do to be able to do that? Well, I think we need to head in this direction, dive to this depth. Okay, so what am I thinking right now? Well, you're probably thinking, is it safe to do so? And that's the question about what am I thinking, and that psychological, or that safety really within the business. And we need to be giving people within our businesses that combination of the intent, which is what is it we're trying to do, getting them to think about, in our shoes, what's the thing to do, and then also in the longer term, is it the right thing to do? And that's where understanding all of our long-term goals of the business, the values of the business, so that people have that framework to be able to think in the way that we want them to as leaders. So that was a bit of a long-winded answer, but hope that helps.
Well, I'm come back at press you a little again on the same similar question is like, but how do you find them? How do we find these people? I've got my own theories. I know Jack Welch talks about hire people with runway. You're a $10 million company, hire somebody who's run a $100 million company. By the way, don't hire somebody who's run a $1 billion company, because they cannot make the adjustment downward that extreme. But you want someone who's already been there, done that before, and if they have, they'll help you get from 10 million to 100 million, or a million to 10 million. Any thoughts on how we find these people?
Well, they're clearly this is a really difficult thing, and the whole, especially at the moment, the whole aspect of recruitment is a challenge for any business. I think what you're referring to there is also a fundamental decision between, are we better off hiring several junior people and trying to train them up within the business, or if investing in somebody that's a bit more senior and has got that experience, and generally the latter is the right thing to do. We're better off looking for and finding somebody that, as you say, has been there and done it, and even if it costs us a little bit more to do that, the return on it is probably likely to be greater than trying to take on people and train them up. But in terms of finding these people, then you've got all sorts of things that we need to do, but it's not easy. You can be looking at your competitors, you can be looking at other businesses, and be constantly on the lookout for these people. And I think that's one of the key takeaways, is that if we've got an idea of where we're headed with the business and what that next stepping stone is, and the kind of people that we need at that next stepping stone, we've got a forward view of it, and we can decide whether we are then developing people from internally, or whether we need to be looking for a particular type of person externally. We can start doing that well in advance of the point when we absolutely need that person on board, and we've got to give ourselves time to do that, and essentially always be recruiting, always be on the lookout for good people. And when you spot a good person, you want to then start to try and initiate those conversations. You may not be ready to take them on at that time, they may not be ready to come to you, but you want to start to build that relationship and building up a kind of a people bank, if you like, so that when it comes to the point that when you do need somebody, you're not starting from scratch and scrambling around, and essentially it's a bit like going shopping when you're hungry. You would just end up with rubbish in your trolley.
Yeah, I call it a scale up in zero mentality. So if we're going to scale in zeros, 10x our business, let's try to vision what the company's going to look like, who we need. And you're right, it takes time. You can't just instantly do it. Like, you need to be able to think about, go to trade shows, meet your competitors, your customers, look within your organization who's got the talent that you might want to invest in
Yeah.
to help you get up to that next level. If you're in the audience and you think this topic's fascinating, we'd ask you to share the room. It's right at the very bottom of the row. I want to do it again right now. I think that's the second time I did it. I didn't get in trouble for that, but share the room again. It's right at the very bottom, second button from the left. And also, if you want to ask a question or you want to talk about your scale up, your story about scaling your business, or any tips or tricks on scaling a business, please raise your hand. It's Friday afternoon, and Michelle, Mimi, Kevin and I, we're just having fun up here, and it's a little bit lonely sometimes. So we'd really encourage you Maureen or Lady Jules or Stephanie, CK, or Mohammed to raise your hand and come and join us, and everybody else in the room too. If you're, and I'll tell you this, we have an announcement. We're actually launching Startup VIP, and we're limited to 2,000 members. And if you join the room, you come on stage, and you're actively involved in Startup Club, you will be invited. Michelle is personally inviting, she runs the room, personally
Yes.
inviting people. Kevin will invite you to become as well. And it's just
Lovely.
a hangout room. It's just a hangout room. There's no shows. People just go there once a week for half an hour right now and just hang out and chat about different things. It's very loose. There's no show or anything like that. But the idea is to connect and network and help each other succeed more. So I encourage you to jump on stage and ask questions. It's a great topic. So let's go to the earlier you talked about a competitive advantage. So a business
Mm.
today, it starts, you might have a hot dog cart on New York, but you want to scale to 10 hot dog carts, but your hot dogs are the same as everyone else's hot dog. Or, what is it that you have that's unique and different that can help you scale? We call
Yeah.
that the X factor, but I'll comment on it a little bit more. But I want to hear from you how businesses need to think differently from startup phase to scale phase.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great example if we take the hot dog stand, because if we break strategy down into its really simple basics, there are only two key decisions that we need to make from a strategic point of view. One is where we're going to play, what playing fields are we going to play on, and the second one is how are we going to win. And if you want the kind of business school words for that, it's what's our participation strategy, so where are we going to participate? What markets? What segments? And the other one is what's our positioning strategy? And so if we take our hot dog stand that you've just said, we might be in New York, and we want to have 10 sites, or how many we want to have. The first question is, where are we going? Where are we going to site those? If we're playing in the hot dog market, where are the best sites, or where are we going to site? Are we going to site where everybody else is? There might be the most customers around, but equally there might be other hot dog stands or other types of competition. Maybe there's somewhere that's a bit quieter that actually we can maybe be the only one there, and be a really, really good site. So that sort of might be our participation strategy. Where are we going to participate? And then we've got that strategy to win question, the positioning strategy, and that comes around two key aspects. The first is around our offer. So, are we going to do something around our hot dogs that means that we're better than anybody else's hot dogs, and therefore can we charge a premium for those hot dogs? So, are we going to do something really, really special that makes them different from everybody else's? Maybe it's a secret sauce, or something like that. And that's our offer advantage, or offer question. And the second is our cost advantage. Maybe actually we are going to sell fairly standard hot dogs, but because we can source the hot dogs cheaper than somebody else, or we've got a special way of making them, or doing them, or something that means that actually our cost base is lower than our competition, that means that we can charge the same price as the competition and make more profit. Or maybe if we really want to, we can maybe discount versus our competition but still make significant profits. So with a very simple business there, we're illustrating that idea of where are we going to play, what playing fields are we going to play on, and what's our strategy to win in those playing fields. And they're the primary decisions that we need to make from a strategic point of view. And then of course we need to work out, okay, if that's our strategy, how are we going to then execute and deliver on that strategy?
Yeah, I like it. And I mentioned X factor. I'm trying to work it out on a hot dog stand here, but maybe you come up. I mean, one idea. This is my wife's a vegetarian, right? So you have a separate barbecue that does vegetarian hot dogs, and nobody else has. Now we're
Yeah.
unique and different. And by the way, you might not know this, but people often go to restaurants where they serve vegetarian food, but the vast majority of the people in the group eat meat. But you have one that is vegetarian, and we have this in our office all the time. It drives me nuts a little bit, to be honest with you. But We actually go to a particular restaurant because they do serve vegetarian, even though we'll eat
Right.
meat-based dishes. And so that's unique and different. I know Vern Harnish talks about this. I know that Jim Collins talks about this in his book as
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
around this X factor. So when in the United States, Domino's came out with 30 minutes or free. In Toronto, it was pizza, 30 minutes or free. And we had a pizza restaurant when I was 18 years old. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're all going to go bankrupt. This is ridiculous. You can't do it. Well, what they did is they re-engineered their entire business from processes to systems, et cetera, et cetera. And that's their X factor. That's what made them the most successful pizza companies in the world. And you think of National Car Rental. Have you ever used National Car Rental, Kevin?
I don't think I have actually. No.
So listen to this. So what I hate about travel is you go, you land, you're doing all this travel, and you have to line up at the desk. It's 30 minutes, and then you got to, National Car Rental about 6 years ago or 10 years ago came out with a system where you just show up, get in the car, and go. What an idea! You pick your
Yep.
own car, you get in your car. There's a security gate. You do hand over your license, show your ID, and they have your visa on file, and you just go.
Yep.
And what a concept! You don't have to wait a half an hour. So if there's bottlenecks in your industry, then
And
you can
that's
break those bottlenecks, right, Kevin?
absolutely, that's a great way of looking at it. So it's if there's a bottleneck or if there's something that frustrates you about that particular industry, real bug, and if you can find a way to maybe fix that, as you've just illustrated really nicely in that example, then you've got something that might disrupt the market and create a competitive advantage. There's a great example, isn't there, around the Federal Express. They came up with the first hub and spoke idea. I think he was a student at Yale, and he disrupted the market because he said, this is the problem within the. This is ridiculous that we're doing all of these separate legs or whatever else. It would make much more sense to change that completely and create a new model with this hub and spoke. So if you're able to think in that way and come up with something that really is disruptive, then clearly that's fantastic, and that's going to give you an advantage that probably will last for some time. But even if we're not able to disrupt in such a big way, again, we can think, just going back to that hot dog stand and with a relatively simple business, we just need to be thinking about it a little bit more in those lines, rather than, well, I'm just going to sell hot dogs and everybody else is doing them at this price, they're doing them in this way, so I'm just going to try and do more of the same. That's unlikely to give you anything that's going to give you any long-term success with your business. But the other thing with any of these is, of course, you've got to keep reinventing yourself, because you might come up with a competitive advantage, and most things are likely to be copyable in some way. I mean, of course, the best competitive advantage would be one that would be almost impossible for somebody else to copy. But generally, if you're successful with something, somebody's going to see that happening, and they are then going to mimic you, unless you've got something that's going to completely protect it, like a patent or something like that. But you've got to be constantly on the lookout for, okay, well, that's working for now, but let's not stand still. Let's look for the next thing, the next thing that we're going to evolve into that will keep that advantage going.
Yeah, and in our incubator, we have a company called paw.com, and we've done a number of Me Too products, and almost every time it fails, we invent a new category, do something unique and different, and it just
Yeah,
kills it and takes off. So be
yeah.
different. We have a brave soul, Lady Jules, on the stage here. I think you've been on with us before. We're excited to have you on again, a brave soul. And Michelle, we have to invite her to the VIP club, because I'm telling you, we
Yes.
appreciate you coming on stage, lady. Do you have a question for Kevin, or a thought, or a scale up story?
Hello, everybody. This is Lady Jules sending you love and gratitude from London. I was just typing in my thoughts because, because I don't want to interrupt your train of your flow. So thank you for letting me speak and for coming up on stage. I just want to chime in really quickly about the hot dogs. I'm not sure if that's a real product that you're
It's not, but
it's just a case
I had
study.
very humble
Okay, got
roots
it,
when
got
I
it.
started, but
Right. Okay. So, because Kevin doesn't have a bio, so I don't know what's going on. So I was just thinking you went down the lines of vegan products, which is really good because people would pay extra for vegan products today, and people would pay extra for quality. I know there's so much propaganda about hot dogs. Hot dogs can also be very delicious and nutritious when it's produced selectively. So
Yeah, and it's interesting that my wife, Lady
exactly.
Jules, my wife actually notices that if a restaurant uses the same grill and instruments to cook the vegetarian on the meat grill, she notices that. And
Yes.
I bet you every vegetarian knows that. That's
Yes.
why I suggested in our mock X Factor for our hot dog cart company that Kevin, myself, and you are starting together with Michelle and Mimi, that we actually do a vegetarian grill.
So if you have a vegan, particularly just a cart for vegan health produce, and with a whole different branding, and it will make a huge difference. And you know what's funny? The cost remains the same, but the profit margin is incredible. People are willing to pay extra. It's just the way it is, and that's the growing trend. People want to be healthy now, particularly with the homeschooling, with the working from home and all of that. And if you also offer delivery services, things like that, even KFC, McDonald's, Pizza Hut, all of them, they are now offering delivery services here. So it's moving towards a different trend, and we lived in a very blessed, sophisticated era. So much
Yeah,
can be done online. So that's
yeah.
just my 2 cents, and I hope that brings value to
No,
anyone who's
you
listening.
bring up a really interesting concept around, because I looked at your bio as well, and thank you for letting Kevin know. Kevin's brand new to Clubhouse, but we got Kevin. You got to update your bio. Your book's not even on your bio, but
Okay.
that was really good.
Yep.
That was really good intel. But this idea of purpose, this idea of mission, and doing something good in the world, and if you can articulate that as an entrepreneur in your startup but also in your scale up. And Kevin, I was going to ask you, how you think about what she's talking about there around, a purpose and a mission and
Mm,
and
yeah.
doing something good and how that attracts more people to your company and also more customers to your company and can help you scale.
Yeah, well, Simon Sinek's really strong on this, isn't it? Knowing your why and communicating that why, and yeah, I mean that's the foundation really of anything. If you're just going into business and your idea is just simply to make money, um, then okay, fine, but it's not going to be anything like as powerful if you've got a mission that you're trying to achieve, and that not only your customers but also your employees can then get behind as well. And our for us, the stat that you mentioned right at the very beginning, that less than 4% of businesses scale beyond 10 employees, and in fact less than 1% beyond 50 employees, that's the stat that shook us. And our mission is to help to create more scale ups and to move the needles on those dials, because we know that will give entrepreneurs a better lifestyle and what they're looking for. So that's our mission to get behind and support more entrepreneurs to kind of create the kind of business that will give them the lifestyle that they wish, by moving the needles on those scale up dials. And I think having a strong core purpose and a strong mission behind that is fundamental to really being able to rally people around that cause, if you like, and really then be it's your north star, as I think Jim Collins refers to it as, that is your forever. That's why we're forever driving through, but everybody can get behind it, and you can work out what's the next mountain that you're going to climb on the way to that north star, if I'm not mixing analogies too much. But it gives that real sense of purpose for everybody, and of course your customers can then buy into that as well, ideally.
Yeah, and I also like the work that Vern did. Michelle, I'll come to you right next there. But Vern did around Vern Harnish around culture statements and probably the best example is Zappos and how they came up with 10 culture statements.
Mm-hmm.
But back in 2006, when the wheels were coming off the bus of one of my companies, it was a publicly traded company, and we were stalling out revenue, whatnot. We brought in a coach, a CEO coach, and one of the first things we did is try to articulate our values, and we came up with 4 key pillars. First and foremost is respect, and I'm doing this by memory here, okay? So don't, it's 20 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever. First and foremost is respect, recognize greatness. When our customers succeed, we succeed, and we spend it like our own. Oh my gosh, can't believe I can still remember that. But 4 key phrases that became the language of the office, and we hit 600 employees in this company. And when you first start out, you're like, okay, the culture is really just everybody around. It's like you're ordering pizza and you're working late, you're doing this, it's that. But then you got 600 employees in 12 different offices globally. How do you maintain that culture?
Yeah.
That when you first set out that you wanted to, and how do you scale culture? And then we'll go to you, Michelle. Sorry about that, Michelle.
No problem at all. So, Kevin, I'm thinking about
No,
your
sorry, I was sort
book,
of,
and we're
Michelle,
talking
I
a
was
lot.
asking Kevin to sort of respond to the culture, and then we'll go to you.
Oh, okay.
Right. Sorry to interrupt. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely great comment, great example there as well. And when I go back to what I was saying about giving people the intent and getting them to be able to think in the way that you would like them to, then if you have to have this framework of your values and ideally your purpose that people can then work to. And as you say, if you're going to scale to 600 people, they've got to have understood what those are. And if I go back to the purpose side of things, I think it's been really clear to us with businesses that we've worked with through the pandemic period, for example, those that have got a really strong sense of purpose were able to, even if they couldn't carry on delivering the business in the way that they were before, they could still deliver on their core purpose. They just had to adjust things a little bit and do things in a little bit of a different way. So if your core purpose, if you were say running some gyms, for example, and you could no longer in lockdown, you could no longer have people physically coming to your gyms. That doesn't mean that if your core purpose was around improving the health of the nation or the fitness of people, you can still stick to that, and you will then find another way that you can deliver on that core purpose. Whereas if you haven't got a strong core purpose, it's like, oh, I don't know what we're going to do then. Do we shut the doors, or do we just pivot to do something random, or whatever else? But you've got to have that core purpose, that North Star, and that really helps you at times that are difficult, to keep everybody on track to where you're trying to get to. And then the stronger that you've got that set of values that people have bought into, that then helps them to think in the way that you would want them to, which means that they can be more empowered to make decisions in the right way that you would like them to.
It's funny. My personal trainer switched from in person to through Zoom, and even today we still keep doing the Zoom more
Yeah.
often than in person. So it's funny. All right, Michelle, we're ready for you now. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So we've got our purpose, we've got our North Star, and you talk a lot in the book about the 90-day sprints and the planning sessions. Could
Mm.
you, help our members out a little bit here? Like, explain how you actually go about it, and what is the purpose? What do you want to come out of your strategic planning sessions with? And how are you going to measure it? Like, give us a little bit about the process.
So I think the first thing is for those people that maybe don't have a 90-day planning process or don't know what that's about. The idea here is that people talk. We've just been talking about the North Star and where we're headed, and that's great. But it's very, very long term and hard to get a head around. In an ideal world, what we're then doing is we're breaking that down and saying, okay, well, if that's generally our North Star. Where do we want to be? And Jim Collins does this nicely. He calls it the big, hairy, audacious goal. Well, where are we headed in the next 10 to 15 years? But what we then need to do is say, okay, well, what's the next 3 years? What that's a little bit. We can do a 3-year plan around that. But then, okay, break that down into 1 year. And a lot of businesses we work with will talk about doing a 1-year plan and having that plan for the year. But then, of course, if we just work through the year and without thinking around how we're doing against some of those critical things that we've said that we need to do for the year, then we might find that we've gone 3/4 of the year and realize that we're off track or whatever it might be. Whereas if we put in place a 90-day cycle, then every 90 days basically what we're doing is we're going, what's gone well in the last 90 days against what we said we would do in that 90 days. How are we doing against that 1-year plan? Where are we off track? Where do we need to adjust our course a little bit to get back on track? But also, what's happened in this last 90 days that is new, that we hadn't really thought about, or that has come up as a challenge or an issue that we need to fix. So we've got that combination of keeping the plate spinning, which is what most of us do all the time. We get sucked back into the business. It's all about keeping the plate spinning and keeping the lights on in the business. But we're balancing that with actually where are we headed and what's the next big thing that we need to work on to get us towards where we said we were going to get to in the year. And it turns out that 90 days is a really good time period, because it's long enough that we can achieve something reasonably significant. It's not like saying, well, what am I going to achieve by tomorrow? Well, it's only going to be fairly tactical things. But if it's next 90 days, we can probably chunk off a fairly big project to deliver on. But it's not so far away that we can't really imagine it. Because if I said to people, here, what is your business going to look like in 3 years' time? That's a bit hard for us to imagine right now. We might have some goals and objectives, but it's a little bit far away to really be tangible about going, this is what it needs to look like. Whereas if I said, what does good look like in 90 days' time? So that would be the end of, middle to end of March of next year, 90 days' time, we can probably be much clearer about, this needs to happen, that needs to happen, the business needs to have done that. And then we can work back from that to set our, and review that on a weekly and a monthly basis to make sure that we get towards that 90 days. So does that answer your question, Michelle?
Yeah, that's great. And, I'm curious because we go back and forth on this. Who do you invite to those planning sessions, and who facilitates it? Like, what is best practices that you've seen that actually works? Because I think we all know if you're not careful, you'll get, just one person dominating, or kind of a mind think, meaning people just following, the leader or whoever that is. So how do you really suss out and get people really involved in that planning process?
Yeah. So quite a few things there. So the first is that with any kind of session that we're doing, whether it's 90-day planning or whether it's whether it's a weekly session or whatever, we need to have an agenda for it. So there's no point in just saying, right, we're going to meet for 2 hours and have a blank kind of agenda or a very loose agenda. We need to make it nice and tight. But if we want, and that helps people to then know, right, at this part of the agenda, we're going to be expected to come here with, my area of responsibility was looking after the marketing side, and I'm going to have 10 minutes where I'm going to have to present how we did against the marketing aspects of the business, or the priorities that we set within marketing. And then everybody knows that they need to come prepared with those, with that aspect of what they're doing. Equally, if we know that there's going to be a section on the agenda which is to address a current challenge, maybe to prioritize and address a current challenge, then we know ideally that we should have prepared in advance and agreed what some of those challenges are, so that can be agreed beforehand that they're going on the agenda, rather than having, I don't know, one of the things that kills any kind of session or productivity of any session is the any other business section, you just don't want that, because that's an opportunity to be derailed by somebody coming up with a pet hate or a pet project, and you end off down a tangent. So you've got to keep it nice and structured, but making sure that you have sections within those sessions where you're making use of the fact that you've got some really good people in your business, and that you're then harnessing the power of their thoughts, if you like, that collective intelligence. So there's some basic principles as to who should be at those meetings, and that kind of depends on the stage of business that you're at. If you're running a business where there's maybe three to five of you or something like that within the business, then you probably want the whole team at that business. If you're running a business where you've got dozens of people within the business, then you're probably talking around then having the senior leadership team at those meetings, because once you get beyond 5 or 6 people in a meeting, then you're going to find it quite hard to keep that productive, and give people enough time each to be involved, without it going off tangent and getting very difficult to keep control of it. So 5 or 6 people is a good number of people to have in some of the more strategic type sessions. And of course, if you're a larger business, then you're going to have teams. So you're then going to probably have sessions where you'll have the different departments or the different teams that will be working. But again, it kind of comes back to those units of where people work best together and the right sizes, and somewhere around about 5 to 6 people is a great working group kind of size to be working with. And we do quite a lot of mastermind type groups, and we found that that's a great number of people to have in there. It's enough that you can get that real collective thinking and creativity and range of thought, but without being too many that you lose control of the session.
Yeah, it's interesting because we do a monthly meeting with myself and 7 other individuals who run their own companies at an organization called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and 8 seemed to be the ideal number, but I like this 5 to 6, 7, 8. I'll tell you the other mistake I see that a lot of businesses do in their strat planning session is they all come to the meeting and department number 1 reports on their stuff, department number 2 reports on their stuff, and they burn a day of just simply reporting on each other's progress.
Yeah.
And I challenge the companies in our incubator and the cohorts that I do and whatnot. I challenge the companies to try to get to 70% of their time on ideation.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you how many breakthroughs we've had at our 2-day strategic planning sessions, how many aha moments we've had. But if we never had those ideation sessions, we never would have come up with this stuff.
Yeah. I think that's really good insight. And yeah, anybody that's worked in big corporate, you'll have been stuck in meetings where that happens. Is it just goes around the room. It just becomes oh my goodness, they're doing their bit now, and I'm coming up in a few minutes. It's just painful, and no decisions ever really get made or any real value. Those aha moments. I think that's absolutely right. And it comes back again to if let's just imagine that we've now done this brilliantly and we've had our 90-day planning and we've identified a handful of key priorities for the business. So there may be 5 or 6 things that the business needs to do in that next 90 days. And then we've broken that down by the senior leaders within the business as to what are my priorities? So what are Kevin? So these are the 5 the business needs to achieve. But what does Kevin need to do in the next? Maybe what are his 3 real priorities that he must achieve in the next 90? So that I must achieve. And if all of us have done that, and then we've built our little action plans on each of those priorities, and Jim Collins calls them rocks, which is those of you that know that analogy, which is a great thing. So what are my rocks that I need to do, and what's my action plan to deliver on those? That means that when we have our weekly meeting and our monthly meeting, but let's just say our weekly catch up, instead of reporting on, well, I've done this and I phoned them and I wrote those emails and I've done this thinking and whatever, instead of having that kind of thing, it's like, right, those are my 3 rocks. I'm on track with those 2, so I don't need any help. I'm off track with this one, and I either do or don't need help. And if I don't need help, because I got a plan to fix it, then that's great. And we're just on track, and don't need help. Or if I'm off track but I need some help, then that's the bit that comes into the discussion part of the agenda later on, so that we can then work together to try and help me out of the roadblock that I've got on my priority. But if we haven't properly set our priorities in the first place and worked on those rocks individually, then we're just kind of rambling, and we're going to have the kind of session where it goes all over the place because nobody really knows what's important and what's not, and we're just going to report back on all sorts of things.
So let me try to summarize a little bit here, and I maybe add a little bit extra too. We're pretty much in alignment on our theories around scaling. So we start with this big, hairy, audacious goal. 10 years from now, we want to be able to change the world by doing X and using smart, specific,
Mm-hmm.
measurable, attainable. We want them to be targets that are very specific. Okay. So we're going to have 1 million customers, or we're going to start. Let's do Startup Club. Okay. That makes it easier. Okay. So Startup Club is now 910,000 members. We want to be able to affect or change the lives of 10 million startups around the world globally in 10 years. We'll just go with that right now. Okay. And then we
Yep.
want to bring that down to our 3-year goal. So 3-year goal is that Startup Club wants to get to 2 million members in 3 years and generate a positive cash flow and have whatever. So we got our 3-year winning moves, we got 3 to 5 winning moves the next 3 years. Then we bring that down to our annual goals, which means, the next 12 months, we want to generate Michelle and I talked about that. We actually have specific numbers, but I won't use them right now. But we want to generate X amount of revenue and get to X number of members and improve engagement level. So we have 3 goals for next year. And then we bring that down to our quarterly. Okay, in the next quarter, we have these 3 goals. And then we bring that down to our weekly meetings. In our weekly meetings, we talk about where we're at. And then we also have personal goals. So we'll have we have company goals, personal goals, and then we have a daily sales huddle. That's what I added. That's the burn harness piece that I
Yes,
added
there
to
you go.
one of my prior companies, the daily sales huddle. And you can do a daily huddle on all your employees as well. But typically, what I've done is the daily sales huddle, weekly meeting, quarterly goal setting, annual goal setting, 3-year goal setting, BHAG. Am I on track, or
Ab-
am I
ab-
missing anything?
Absolutely perfectly, and that's exactly that. So we've got that right. We call that the business rhythm. So we've got the right rhythm within the business that supports that 90-day planning. So and ideally, yes, you'd have you'd exactly what you said with the daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. And yes, you'll have an annual planning rhythm as well. And if you've worked out your key agendas for those, so your daily are going to be really quick and not very strategic. They are really about what needs to be done today. And what what came up from yesterday, what needs to be done today, and where does anybody need help. But then your weekly bring in a little bit more of how we're doing against those rocks as well as that, and of course your monthly then are a bit more strategic. But if we've got agendas for all of those, and who should be at and we also part of that is who should be at each of those sessions, then we've got the right structure, the right rhythm in place. That means that we can have that ideation, those discussions. We can make the most use of the fact that we've got good people in the business and use their brains to help solve problems, as opposed to just having meetings for meeting's sake, that everybody just ends up feeling, why on earth am I at this meeting?
Yeah, that's great. Of the 3, so it's funny because I guess we've learned from the same leaders and whatnot, but we do the daily huddle, and we say, what was your top victory yesterday? What are your focus today? Are you stuck? And
Yeah.
I actually like to bring the executives into that meeting. It's only a 5-minute meeting with the salespeople, and I don't let the executives talk. Okay, just so you know, I like to bring the executives in because we want to become a sales-driven organization. There's nothing's more powerful than daily sales huddle with your
Yeah.
executive team listening in. But the most important, guess which one, Kevin, is the most important, most impactful of those 3 questions? And I know this for a reason. It's, tell me about your victory yesterday. And the reason
Yep.
I know that is because when I had to show up to these meetings, I had to come. If I was the acting sales manager when we didn't have one sometimes, I would have to come up with my victory, and I would say, you know what? Yesterday I called up the president of this telecom and this location at this time, and we set up a meeting for next week. And I know it motivated me every day to do something big to prove to my team, because I would be embarrassed if I didn't show up I do my own team, and so that's definitely a question we want to ask. And then we'll jump down to you, Tej. Any other thoughts on that, Kevin, before we jump down?
Yeah, no, I think that's right, and we want to give people a little bit of peer pressure in order. And what you've just described there is, that you're going to be asked that question because it's a very simple agenda, but you're going to be asked, and it happens every day. And there's that little bit of peer pressure for you to come up with something a little bit special, the same as everybody else has got that peer pressure too. So it's you're not going necessarily going to get a real rap over the knuckles if you haven't come with it, but you put that peer pressure on yourself to come up with something good. And that's something that we want to try and build into all of the sessions that you do as well, so that everybody feels we know what we need to come with, we know we're going to be asked about it, and we need to feel that we need to come up with something good, a good contribution.
Yeah. Well, we have another scale up geek on the stage with us right now. Tej, thanks for coming on. I don't know if you have some thoughts on scaling up you want to share with us, or maybe a question for Kevin, but we're excited you came up on stage.
Thanks for pulling me up, Colin and Kevin. Good to meet you. I apologize I couldn't get on earlier, but I was listening. Very good insights. I think actually I looked it up. You and I have a couple of really good friends in common, Dr. Donald Weiss, and I think Trent Larson, even Wasim. So good to connect with you. But hi everyone, Tage here. The thought here is just kind of, and you may have covered this before I jumped on, but I look at everything from a top line down. The underlying ethos would be working in the business versus on the business. In the business is what you do day to day, month to month, quarter to quarter to make sure top line's there, it's growing, and then you're managing EBITDA and bottom line, net income, etc. But that is what pays the bills. That's important. We get lost in the sauce. You can't see the forest through the trees because then you have to work on the business. So I break
Mm-hmm.
everything down when I teach my students for our own firm. Hey, this is good. Quarterly, we are talking about in the business, but also quarterly, we got to talk about on the business, right? That is 5, 10 year trajectory. And really, we stayed at 3 to 5, but I'm learning to think about 10 years and outward, especially with technological advances right now happening at a much more rapid rate. So, in the business, most people do. They forget the on the business, which is things like, I think Kevin covered, if you're a larger company, we deal with what we call middle market companies. These are companies that do several hundred million in sales. They have a board of directors, which is paid, and they have an advisory board, unpaid. So even if you are a small business, you're a one-man shop, get yourself one or two advisors, and that's your board of advisors, right?
Yep.
Get them, and it's not necessarily that they think like you respect them, and you trust what they're saying, but a lot of times they don't think the way I do, and I like that because they'll bring ideas to the table that I might be complacent with. I don't want to make a change, and they'll say, I respect them, so I listen to them, and then they'll say, you didn't think about it this way. So anyone who's listening, even if you're a one-man shop, find a key person that you trust. Consider them when you're a board of advisors, and as you grow, have a small board of advisors. You don't have to pay them, hence the term board of advisors, right? And you meet every so often, take them out for a drink, whatever it might be. Number one. Number two, that long-term structuring and thinking, you got to reverse engineer it. So think about on the business, right? That's thinking about where's the market going, right? We're going into not a depressed, but we're going into a recessionary time for the next year. Most people are buckling down, thinking about cutting costs, cutting heads, whatever it might be, and getting through next year. That's superb to do. But think about when things open up in 2024, going forward 2025, when things are good, how are you going to capitalize? And you won't capitalize if you focus on it in the last minute, in the last hour, in the last month of the year. Think about it now. So when the tough times do subside, you want to think about things like that. So I don't want to go on too long, but if you have a question, but that's the way I look at things is I saw the term scale up strategies in the easiest way. Well, not easiest, but the most basic thinking is work in the business. That's the immediate term, but work on the business, that speaks to the scaling up when you're looking at external factors as well as what you're doing over a 3, 4, 5 year period, because that'll show you inefficiencies in your business, or profits or things ahead of the curve that you might not be thinking because you're too busy in the business. So hope that makes some sense, Colin.
No, absolutely. Kevin, any thoughts before we close out the show here on that? I think that was amazing, Tej, and I
Yeah, I
sent
think
you a
that I
back channel because I would love to do a show with you on that topic specifically. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great, a great summary. Really, Tej. That working on the business rather than it. Of course, that comes from Michael Gerber with the E Myth, and everybody talks about that a lot, and that's avoiding trying to. It's part of the thinking process and making better decisions and constantly thinking and looking ahead rather than just being in the weeds of the business. And I think that's a really good point you made as well about having other people to bounce these ideas off of, because they will have different views. They might not have all the specific knowledge that you have about something, but they'll be able to ask some of those questions that maybe you didn't even think about because you just it just didn't occur. And I think that's a really good bit of advice, is to make better decisions. We need a framework of which to work, which is kind of what we do with the scale up journey, but we need to also then be able to have people to bounce those ideas off so that we're challenged and our thinking is critiqued and improved all the time from different perspectives.
Yeah, that's great. What a great show, Kevin. You come on, you spend an hour with us, and it's your own time, and we appreciate that. And Tej, you as well, and everybody who comes on stage, we really do appreciate. And I'm actually thinking that it would be so cool after the book Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat comes out on October 3rd, published by Forbes. When that book comes out, if the three of us got on stage and did a session on scale up, I think we could really put together an epic show. But separately from that, Tej, I also sent you a back channel on another show idea, another show topic. Um, well, you know what? The other thing in that book we talk about under Start is looking for ideas in the next wave. What's the next big wave? Well, we believe it's Chat GPT. We believe it's AI. This thing 2 weeks ago came out. Someone showed me a demo of it, and then I got 4 or 5 different people. I'm seeing rooms all over Clubhouse on this. So we're going to run. Next week's show is not going to be held Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern due to the holidays. It will be run next Wednesday. It's probably going to be a 2 to 3 hour show. So we're going to go extra long on this one. We're trying to bring in experts on Chat GPT. Let me tell you this. I did not buy a birthday present for a friend of mine. I'm heading over there after this call, and I'm having dinner with 3 friends of mine. We're celebrating her birthday. I went to ChatGPT in 10 seconds, typed in things about her and dot, 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 maybe 20 seconds. I spent 30 seconds, and it wrote the most unbelievable poem. I asked it to write a poem, something that I couldn't have spent months to create. This is a game changer, a true what paradigm shift, what Jeffrey Moore calls inside the tornado. AI is now, this is the one, this is the moment in time where we're seeing AI explode, and the opportunities are going to be tremendous for startups. So we're going to talk about ways we can make money and how startups can use Chat GPT, this advanced AI, to change the world and make a lot of money. So that's next Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern. We're very excited about that show. You've been listening to Serial Entrepreneur, Secrets Revealed, a live show and podcast now. We're happy to say we are on podcast, and we have over, this is the 87th episode. And I often say, if you go back and you listen to these episodes, you listen to all the authors, you listen to all the serial entrepreneurs that we've had on this show, you'll have an MBA in entrepreneurship. Last week we had on the founder of Reebok. He was 87 years old. It was a phenomenal show. Go check it out. Search on this, and we'd love for you to give us a review on that podcast as well if you liked it. But search for Serial Entrepreneur, Secrets Revealed on your favorite podcast channel. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern.
Thank you very much.
Take care, folks.